I never expected my grandma's heartbreaking journey of trauma would inspire my life-changing path. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The phone call shattered my world. In that moment I could only hear my heartbeat, pounding like a drum, drowning out my father's shaky voice. Grandma had been found. Alone. Scared. The image of her frail figure, hiding beneath her frayed quilt, my mind couldn't handle it. No one talked about it. No one whispered of her pain. Grandma had always been a mystery wrapped in love. Her stories, like intricate tapestries, held colors of life I was eager to understand. But behind those warm eyes lay shadows, dark echoes of a life I could only begin to piece together. The whispers of her past would slip through her lips on nights when the moon was high, but I didn't grasp their weight then. Not until that call came. I felt it in the air, a heaviness that enveloped me, pressing down on my chest. How could someone so full of love and laughter wrestle with demons behind closed doors? I remember her hands trembling as she brushed my hair, the way they shook like leaves in a storm. A sudden chill ran through me. It was in the silence too, a lingering pause that was thick with unspoken words. I wanted to reach through the tapestry of her soul and pull the darkness into the light, but how could I? My mind raced back to the attic we'd visit every summer. The smell of dust and old books wrapped around us like a cocoon. My heart raced at the thought of the forgotten boxes we'd uncover together. Labels yellowed with time. They read memories and secrets. I used to think they were treasures, but now they felt like ghosts burdened with pain. One night, she opened a box filled with trinkets. There was a locket, tarnished but beautiful, and she wore it around her neck like a shield. She told me it contained the picture of her first love. I remember asking her why she didn't just let it go, why she carried it with such grief etched on her heart. Her gaze locked with mine, and in that moment, I saw a flicker of rage and sorrow, a tempest brewing beneath her fragile facade. Months passed after that eerie phone call. Each day was an unraveling thread, bringing me closer to a truth I wasn't yet ready to face. I started digging, pulling at those threads. What was the story behind that locket? Who was the man that haunted her memories? That week marked a turning point. A handwritten letter suddenly appeared beneath her old rocking chair, as if it had been waiting for me. The ink had faded, but the words screamed to be heard. "Forgive me," it began, and I felt my heart clench. The pain poured out, spilling over the fragile paper. Scandals and pain swirled like a storm in my mind. Who had hurt her? I had to know more. I had to save her from the grip of the past. Each clue was like taking a step into a whirlwind, leaving me breathless. Shadows danced around me, whispering secrets that begged to be uncovered. I was determined to piece together the fragments of her history, to heal the wounds that had festered beneath the surface. But then, just as I began to connect the dots, I found another letter tucked deep between the floorboards. Its edge burnt and singed, the handwriting barely legible. "They will come for you," it warned. My stomach dropped. My pulse raced. Who was coming? And what did this mean for me? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days that followed felt surreal, like I was stumbling through a dream that twisted the world around me. I had clutched that frayed letter to my chest, the warning haunting my thoughts day and night. My fingers traced the edges, almost willing it to reveal more. Who was they? Who would want to hurt my grandma? The questions spiraled incessantly, each one tightening the coil of fear in my gut. I could sense the shadows growing longer in our home, the atmosphere thickening with my unexpressed dread. Every creak of the floorboards echoed louder than before, and even the winds outside seemed to taunt me with their whispers. I wished I could confide in someone, my father, my friends, but I knew that the tangled web of my grandmother's past was something I must carry alone. One afternoon, seeking refuge, the attic. The air was still and quiet, a stark contrast to the tempest in my heart. Sunlight streamed through the small window, catching dust motes like tiny fairies dancing in despair. I had gathered the courage to explore the boxes further. My hands trembled with trepidation, but necessity fueled me. I wasn't just unraveling her history. I was searching for a way to save her. Rummaging through the fragile trinkets, I unearthed a faded photograph that slipped out like a secret. A young woman, vibrant and smiling, stood next to a handsome man. The closer I looked, the more a chill crept up my spine. The man had a kindness to his face, but there was something unsettling about the way he held the woman. It was possessive, almost predatory. I turned it over, hoping for names or hints, but all I found was a date scribbled faintly on the back. 1953. I thought of the locket, the weight of its history. Had it been this man? Had he shrouded her in such melancholy? I sank to the floor, my heart aching for the grandmother I wished I could have known without the shadows. Just then the wooden door creaked open and I jumped, startled. It was my father. Worry etched deep lines across his forehead as he watched me rummaging through Grandma's treasures. "You shouldn't be in here alone. I'm worried about you," he murmured, his voice laced with concern. In that moment I felt a rush of longing. I wanted to share my discoveries, my fears, and the letters, but the thought of dragging him into this dark web kept my lips sealed. Instead, I forced a smile and brushed aside the pile of memories. "I'm fine, just looking for some things." He nodded, but I could see he wasn't completely convinced. He took a step closer, and the warmth of his presence was almost overwhelming. "If you ever want to talk, I'm here," he said softly before stepping back, as if giving me space but not wanting to leave. As the door clicked shut, I felt the weight of what I was hiding. The letters, the darkness, and the eruption of secrets weighed heavily on my chest. Maybe I wasn't the only one carrying burdens, but the thought of sharing my fears made me hesitate. After that encounter, a spark of resolve ignited within me. I had to reach out to whoever this man was, find out if he was the answer to unraveling my grandmother's heartache. I needed more information. I turned back towards the light outside, gathering the scattered fragments of the past, waiting for an illuminating connection. And the following days, I broke interpersonal barriers, speaking with neighbors who had known her. Endless stories poured forth, tinted with laughter and resilience, a backdrop to her pain. Yet each tale led me back to the unanswered question of the man in the photo, a shadow that outstretched across her life. And then, just when the sun began to shine brighter in the laughter of shared memories, I received a message that chilled me to the bone. A single text echoing in the dim glow of my phone screen. "Stop looking. They won't let you get away." My heart raced as I stared at the message, confusion and fear flooding my thoughts. Who had sent it? Was it connected to the warnings in the letter? As the realization settled in, the heavy shadows returned, reminding me that my search was igniting a darkness I couldn't control. My hands trembled, the world around me blurring as I realized that my journey, a path toward healing for my grandmother, could unleash dangers I was unprepared to face. An emotional cliff awaited just beyond the horizon, and it loomed closer with every click of the clock. The next morning, tension coiled tightly around my chest as I sat at the kitchen table, the sunlight spilling in like liquid gold. My father busied himself with breakfast, but every clink of the silverware felt like a warning bell chiming in my mind. I couldn't shake off the fear induced by the text message. "Stop looking. They won't let you get away." Who were they? And what did they want from me? To distract myself, I stirred my coffee, the steam curling in the air like a whisper. I longed to share my fear with my father, but as I glanced at him, I could almost see the shadows gathering in his eyes. The worry, the loneliness he exuded made me pause. No, I wouldn't add to his burdens. Not now. Instead, I turned to a scrap of paper, scribbling down a new list of names. I had gathered tidbits of my grandmother's history from the neighbors, yet none had a clue about the enigmatic man in the photograph. I hoped that perhaps someone would know him, the man whose silent presence loomed over her youthful smiles. I had two leads that felt worth pursuing. Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman with sharp eyes and a penchant for gossip, could be a treasure trove of stories, and Ethan, an old childhood friend of Grandma's, who lived just a few streets down, often kept to himself but might hold the key to untold tales. I bit my lip, fear battling with the flicker of hope that ignited in my chest. Perhaps there was still light to uncover amidst the darkness swirling around my thoughts. After a hesitant breakfast, I practically fled the house, my mind racing. I pocketed the photo and the letters, determined to find answers, yet a nagging fear dug in deeper with every step I took. What if I was wandering into danger? What if my search would only deepen the shadows? My first stop was Mrs. Henderson's. I knocked on her door, a weight sitting heavy in my stomach. When she opened the door, her warm smile offered a fleeting moment of comfort. We sat in her cozy living room filled with the scent of fresh tea and cookies. She began recounting stories of my grandmother with a spark of joy, painting a picture of love, laughter, and a fierce spirit that had always captivated the neighborhood. But then, as my heart raced with anticipation, Mrs. Henderson glanced out the window, her expression shifting as if she caught a glimpse of something she'd rather not see. Your grandmother was a brave soul, always looking to bring light where there was darkness until the shadows crept in. She mused, her voice trembling. It's a story not everyone knew, a choice she made. There was that man. I wouldn't advise you to dig too deep. Her warning hung in the air, wrapping around my heart with icy fingers. What do you mean? I pressed, curiosity fighting against my growing dread. Who was he? Mrs. Henderson's eyes darkened as she leaned forward, her voice dropping to a hushed whisper. You really shouldn't ask, these things can swallow you whole. He was no good for her. Far from it, but no one knew what would happen. Just be careful, dear. I left her house with more questions than answers swirling in my mind. Maybe this man had been a fleeting shadow in my grandmother's story, but now he felt like a giant, looming presence, darkening her past with uncertainty. I was left feeling unsettled, knowing I had to see Ethan next, to corner whatever secrets he might hold. When I reached his house, my heart thudded loudly in my ears. I knocked hesitantly, only to find a hollow echo in the silence. Just as I debated leaving, the door creaked open, revealing Ethan, who stood before me, his expression weary yet curious. What do you want? He asked bluntly, as if expecting some horrible news. In his eyes, I saw something reminiscent of my grandmother's pain. It chilled me. Another puzzle piece of the mysterious past arriving to pinch at my resolve. I'm looking for answers about my grandmother and someone she used to know, I spoke, feeling the intensity of my purpose. A man. Can you tell me anything? Ethan hesitated, his eyes flickering with indecision. You have no idea what you're asking, he finally muttered, concern threading into his tone. You may think you're strong enough for the truth, but it's a heavy load, as heavy as a heart can bear. And then, in a moment that felt like eternity, he stepped aside, inviting me in, but just as I crossed the threshold, a sudden shrill ring cut through the atmosphere, the sound of my phone vibrating in my pocket. Did I end that fleeting second of distraction? I glanced at the screen. My breath caught, and the world turned gray as I read the sender. Unknown. The message was brief but absurdly chilling. You should have listened. Stop before it's too late. My heart raced, drowning out the thudding silence of Ethan's house, the walls closing in as the darkness of my pursuit loomed larger around me, and suddenly I found myself caught in a web of terror and unresolved grief, yet knowing deep down, I refused to go back now. As the realization settled, the shadows grew longer, stretching ominously towards me, teasing at the corners of my vision. I needed to make a decision. Would I dive deeper into the abyss of my grandmother's past and risk becoming ensnared in it, or step back into the light, allowing the mysteries to suffocate slowly in silence? The choice loomed, leaving me trembling in uncertainty as the horizon ahead darkened, and an emotional cliff appeared at my feet, nearly unescapable. With the phone still clutched tightly in my palm, I stood frozen, teetering on the edge of a choice that felt monumental. Ethan watched me, his expression a mix of concern and wariness. I could sense the weight of his unspoken words, the urgency to hold on to whatever flickering hope remained entwined with the shadows I was desperately trying to unveil. Are you okay? He asked, his voice laced with an unexpected gentleness, almost as if he sensed the turmoil swirling within me. I nodded, though my heart thudded violently in my chest, the message seeping into my thoughts like ink spreading on paper. I had wanted answers, but in this moment of confrontation between hope and fear, I felt fear clawing at my resolve. I'm fine. Just surprised. Ethan's brow furrowed. Surprised by what? By the message? This isn't a game. If someone's telling you to stop, it might be for a reason, or it might be for the wrong reasons. I shot back defensively, clutching the phone. What if it's a threat that aims to keep me from the truth? Ethan's gaze softened, but his urgency didn't wane. Some truths aren't worth knowing, believe me, he said, a ghost of pain trailing his words. We can't change the past. The clock ticks forward, And sometimes it's safer to leave things buried. Something flickered in the back of my mind, me grandmother's laughter, her spirit, her fierce pursuit of happiness despite the shadows that lurked behind her. What had she faced? What choices had she made that haunted her even as she tried to light the way for those around her? Was I not a reflection of her, navigating my own path through this labyrinth of despair? No, I finally said, conviction tightening my voice. I owe it to her to understand what happened. I have to find the truth. Ethan let out a resigned sigh, leaning against the wall as if the weight of my declaration pressed against him. You think you're ready? I don't know, but be prepared for pain. I stepped into his living room with a sense of determination, the shadows retreating under the weight of my resolve. My instincts were silently screaming at me to delve deeper, to not let fear determine my path. Yet, as I moved forward, I could feel the uncertainty prickling my skin, a stark reminder that the light of discovery often casts the deepest shadows. Tell me about him, I urged, carving a small space through the anxiety that tethered both of us. The man my grandmother knew. What was his name? Ethan leaned back, folding his arms across his chest as if bracing for a storm. His name was Daniel, he finally murmured, almost as if the word itself held a clandestine weight. He was complicated as he spoke. I felt the atmosphere shift, the air thickening with burdened memories. Daniel and your grandmother had something special, a bond that came alive beneath the surface. But not all bonds are meant to last. There were whispers about him being involved in dangerous things. Some said he had a way with manipulation, pulling people into his world without them even knowing. Manipulation? What kind of dangerous things? I pressed, desperate for clarity, for any piece of information that could help me understand the gravity of their connection. Ethan opened his mouth, hesitating long enough that I felt the tension coiling tighter around us. The kind that changes lives, leaves scars, and can destroy families, he said, his voice trembling. I wish I could say more, but honestly, I'm not sure how much of it was true. There were many secrets buried deep. Another fragment of truth struck, igniting a small fire of fear and determination within my chest. But my grandmother chose her path. She didn't have to walk that road. She could have turned away. That's just it, Ethan replied, the lines of worry deepening around his eyes. Sometimes it's not so simple. Maybe that's what she was trying to protect you from, the weight of knowing what she lost. The truth can hurt more than the lies. Before I could respond, the vibration of my phone cut through the quiet, echoing against the walls. My heart sank as I glanced at the screen, seeing the name of a contact I had not spoken to in years. Me mother. She never called unless something was wrong, and the impulsive dread rushed through me, surging beyond the mundanity of our past conversations. Is it her? Ethan asked, concern painted across his face, and in that moment, the room felt unbearably small. I could feel the walls closing in around us, the weight of generations past bearing down. Yes, I replied quietly, the answer hanging between us like an unspoken pact. I should take this. With shaking hands, I answered the call. Her voice tumbled through the speaker, but instead of the usual detached formality, it was raw, trembling with urgency. I need you to come home. It's urgent. A chill settled over my skin as confusion swirled in my mind. For a moment, all thoughts of Daniel and my grandmother's secret was swallowed by a more immediate fear. What's wrong? You don't understand. It's about Grandma and you. I found something, she whispered, her voice hitching on a sob. You need to come home now. My pulse raced as Ethan's piercing gaze weighed heavily on me. There was an urgency in my mother's words that felt like both an invitation and a warning, and suddenly, the story of my grandmother's past and my present began to intertwine in ways I never anticipated. Okay, I'm coming, I answered, gripping the phone tightly as if it could hold me steady. As I disconnected the call, an unsettling wave washed over me. I had set out on this journey for answers, yet now I was faced with the possibility that the truth I sought might carry an unbearable cost. The shadows that loomed around me felt darker, stretching further still, and I was left teetering once more on the precipice of the horror hidden in my family's history. Deeper truths, heart-wrenching revelations, and the looming threat of danger coiled like a serpent around my heart, tightening with every passing moment. And as I prepared to leave Ethan's house, my world hung suspended, the echoes of my grandmother's life and my mother's troubling plea resonating through the air, pulling me closer to a darkness I had only begun to understand. The drive home felt interminable, each mile stretching out like a thread unraveling from a tightly woven fabric. The sun cast a half-hearted light through the clouds, bathing everything in a surreal twilight so fitting for the storm brewing beneath the surface of my thoughts. My mind flickered between the cryptic message from my mother and the chilling hints Ethan had revealed about Daniel. What could my mother have found that tied my grandmother's past to my present? That question lodged itself firmly in my chest, squeezing tighter with every heartbeat. Each thump echoed the whispers of secrets kept too long, secrets that erupted like volcanoes, flooding the ground with ash and ruin. As I turned into our driveway, the familiar facade of my childhood home loomed ominously. It had grown so small in my memory, but now it felt like a fortress, one that safeguarded both cherished memories and bitter scars. Taking a deep breath, I stepped inside. The scent of lavender hung heavily in the air, an attempt at peace amidst an impending storm. My mother stood in the dim light of the kitchen, her figure almost ghostly as she wrung her hands together, her eyes rimmed red with worry. "Thank you for coming, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice fragile like glass. I didn't know who else to turn to. "What's going on?" I asked, urgency pushing my voice harsh. "What did you find? Sit down first, please." Her request felt like an anchor pulling me into the depths of fear. I complied, my heart racing as I listened to the anxious tremor in her words. While I was cleaning out some old boxes in the attic, she paused, swallowing hard. A tremor ran through her hands as she reached into her pocket. "I found this, the last letter your grandmother wrote before she passed. I thought you might want to read it." She placed the delicate envelope on the table between us, a bridge made of paper standing between the past and present. I picked it up, its texture cool and wiry beneath my trembling fingers. A chill crept up my spine as I realized this was a tangible piece of my grandmother's world, a world I had tucked away in the realm of nostalgia, believing it could never touch me again. As I carefully peeled the envelope, a single white sheet slipped onto the table. I smoothed it out, my breath hitching as the familiar scrawl of my grandmother unfolded before my eyes. Her words danced across the page, weaving tales of love, regret, and shadowy silhouettes from her life. "My dearest, if you are reading this, it means the weight of the past has found you. There are secrets I kept from you, things I didn't want you to bear. I hope you never have to walk the path I took. Love is both the joy of light and the burden of shadows. The choices we make can haunt us in the most unexpected ways." My eyes trembled over the ink as her voice seemed to resonate in my mind, echoing with a longing for understanding. "Daniel was a part of my heart, but he was never safe. I didn't want to drag you into my choices, but sometimes the heart knows no boundaries, and it breaks even when we wish to keep it whole." "What does this mean?" I gasped, looking up as the weight of understanding crushed me. Was Daniel the source of her suffering? My mother's expression cracked, tears spilling like unshed rain as she nodded. "He was her first love, but it cost her dearly." I thought she had moved on, but what? I pushed, urgency blurring the edges of my thoughts. There were things I didn't know, things that could put you at risk. When I looked deeper into what she faced, I found old documents, insurance papers, police reports, alarming things connected to Daniel's past. I buried them, hoping to shield you, but now I realize denying the truth can't keep us safe. A feverish pulse raced through my veins as realization struck. "You knew and you didn't tell me? I was trying to protect you," she exclaimed, voice breaking. "I thought burying the ghosts would give you a better life, but they haunt me still." The room fell silent, filled with the heaviness from unspoken burdens. It dawned on me that my quest for answers may have reached an apex, far darker than I anticipated. What happened between my grandmother and Daniel was not merely a matter of the heart. It seemed entwined with an urgency that echoed through generations, and as the fragments of my grandmother's past began to paint a troubling portrait of pain, a sudden realization washed over me. "Wait, if you found these documents, did you see anything that could still impact me? Anything that might put me in danger?" "I don't know," she admitted, her words spilling out between gasps. "But I'm certain you're not just a nameless silhouette in this story. The past has a way of coming back, and Daniel might not be buried after all." A sharp sound reverberated through the air, bringing me back to the present. The phone rang again, slicing through the tension like a razor's edge. I looked down. It was a blocked number, a call I didn't recognize, but one that made my pulse quicken in anticipation and dread. "I have to take this," I said, rising from the table, heart pounding in equal measures of fear and resolve. As I answered, an unfamiliar voice met me on the line, low and serious. "You need to listen carefully. They're watching you. I glanced at my mother, her eyes wide with alarm, and realized that all our tangled threads were about to unravel. The shadows didn't just lurk in secret, they were alive and breathing here, now threatening to consume me and claim the truth my grandmother had fought to protect. "Who is this?" I demanded, pulse racing as I leaned closer to the phone. "Someone who knows the danger you're in. Stay hidden. For your grandmother's sake. And your own, there's a storm coming. You must be ready." The line went dead, leaving a frigid emptiness in its wakea chilling promise wrapped in nightmare. And in that moment of silence, I realized that the past would not remain buried. It was rising to meet me, weaving a tragic path I was almost destined to follow. The tension suffocated the air around me, thick like smoke, as I struggled to process the words that just shattered the fragile calm. I stood frozen in place, the phone slipping from my fingers to rest on the table beside me. The silence hung heavy as I turned to face my mother, whose wide eyes mirrored the dread swelling in my chest. "What did you say?" she gasped, taking a half step back as if the sound of my voice could conjure the storm we both feared. Someone called," I said, the words dripping from my mouth in a stutter. "They said they're watching me." "No." Her denial came like a whispered prayer, breathless and filled with a fist of terror. I watched her chest rise and fall, panic creasing her brow. "It's not possible. How could they? I don't know. But if what they said is true," I faltered, daunted by the prospect of reality growing more treacherous by the second. "It means Daniel's past is still alive, still affecting us somehow." And why Mother's face was ashen, the weight of her own secrets reflected in the lines etching deeper into her skin. "We need to leave this place. Tonight." "No," I protested, a spark of rebellion flaring in my chest. "I can't just run. What if they're right? What if there's something we're missing? I need to know what my grandmother didn't tell us, what you didn't tell me." "But the danger," she began, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. "It's too much to risk. Your safety matters more than the truth." I took a step toward her, desperation clawing at my insides. "And what if the truth is our only chance to be free? What if understanding this can finally break the cycle of fear?" We stood there, the gulf of our emotions vast and tumultuous, searching each other's eyes for a signal. "Understanding, perhaps? Please," I whispered. "Just trust me." Her gaze flickered with uncertainty, but finally, a flicker of resolve ignited. "Okay," she breathed, a reluctant agreement laden with trepidation. "But we dig carefully. I don't want you to get hurt." I promised, though my heart was unsure. "Let's start in the attic where you found the letter. Maybe there's something more we overlooked." The stairs creaked beneath our feet as we ascended, the air growing cooler with every step upward. I felt like an intruder in a sacred space, as if uncovering something buried that had long ceased to belong to us. My grandmother's attic was a vault of memories, dust-covered boxes, shadowy corners, and fragments of a life once lived, and I could almost hear her voice cautioning me to tread lightly. Light streamed in through the small, grimy window, casting a ghostly illumination on the items collected over decades. My mother began opening boxes, her fingers hesitating on old photographs and keepsakes, memories suffocating her as they resurfaced. "Here," she said, finally, pulling a small, worn journal from a crate. "This was buried beneath some old clothes. I've never seen it before." My breath hitched as I accepted the trembling object, its spine worn and frayed, whispering tales of a life I could only vaguely grasp. "Let's see what secrets you hold," I murmured, my heart racing with anticipation as I flipped through the pages. I could feel the weight of every word echoing with my grandmother's truths. Sketches danced across the pages, drawings of Daniel alongside despairing letters that spoke of battles lost, and the haunting isolation of love. The ink scrawled desperate confessions about decisions made and paths taken, each line bleeding raw emotion onto the paper. And then a name caught my attention, startling me as if the letters themselves had leapt off the page. "Evelyn, Mom," I stammered, my fingers clasping the edge of the page as I turned it, heart pounding. "Who is Evelyn?" My mother's face paled further, an ancient shadow flickering in her eyes. "She was someone from my childhood," she said slowly, her voice scarcely above a whisper. "My childhood friend. We lost touch after everything happened with Daniel." "But why would she matter now?" I pressed, the gravity of the moment palpable in the stillness that enveloped us. The air shifted as shadows seemed to stir, thick with memories and unspoken fears. "She was close to Daniel," my mother admitted, each word a fragment of a buried truth rising painfully to the surface. She knows things that might link us to what he did. What did she know? The question hung between us, heavy and ripe with suspicion. I don't know, honey. I just know she could have answers that may open new wounds. The journal trembled in my hands, a tangible representation of our interconnected fates. Suddenly, a loud thud resonated from downstairs, and my heart stopped in my chest. What was that? I gasped, fear slicing through me as the oppressive silence gave way to a creeping dread. I don't know, my mother breathed, eyes darting to the staircase. Stay here. I'll check that I know. I blurted, gripping her arm tightly. We need to stick together. We can't split up. But before I could further protest, she pulled away, determination flickering in her eyes, and moved cautiously toward the attic door. My heart pounded, echoing with the unspoken peril looming outside the walls of our fragile haven. Just as she reached for the knob, the heavy footsteps echoed again, this time accompanied by a rough voice that made my blood run cold, murmuring threats cloaked in darkness. My mother paused, and I could see the fear crack her composure. Sure, I hissed, pulse racing as I leaned closer, the fear turning my diaphanous hope into a shimmering thread, barely holding on. We need something to protect ourselves, that I in that moment. A stray possibility ignited in my mind. Grab the old baseball bat from the corner, I urged, motioning toward the forgotten relic of my childhood now draped in dust. Just in case. With a shaky breath, my mother nodded and retrieved it, wielding it like a shield against the unknown. We positioned ourselves near the window, hearts pounding, minds racing, thoughts skewered by the fear of the past colliding unceremoniously with our present. And as the voices grew louder, mingling with the gathering shadows, a horrified realization washed over me. The storm didn't just cycle through generations. It was here. No, it had come for us. The voices were carrying a message, and I sensed the edges of truth tightening around us, threatening to pull us into a whirlwind of family heritage we were never truly prepared to face. Just then, a loud crash sounded below, splintering the door to our sanctuary. My instincts screamed at me to run, to escape the encroaching darkness, but something deeper, a connection to my grandmother, urged me to stand my ground. Are you ready? I whispered to my mother, gripping the bat as we stood together against the terrible unknown. Before she could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows below, haunting and familiar Daniel. And in that electric moment, as his eyes met mine, the weight of our past collided catastrophically with the uncertainty of our future. The silence that enveloped the attic was suffocating, layered with the unspoken history that had once separated us. As Daniel's entrance shattered the fragile barrier of our containment, I felt the air shift, pregnant with both fear and unresolved questions. My heart raced as I locked eyes with him, the man whose existence loomed larger than life in our family's fragmented narrative. Why are you here? My mother's voice trembled, the baseball bat raised instinctively as though it conjured courage from the depths of our fear. Daniel's gaze was unsettling, both familiar and foreign. I came to warn you, he said, his voice laced with an urgency that startled me into silence. You shouldn't be digging into things you don't fully understand. Why should we believe you? I shot back, my voice stronger than my heart was willing to cooperate. You've haunted our family for years. You're just a ghost of our past. I am very much alive, he said slowly, the shadows of the attic deepening around him. But I didn't come to threaten. I came to protect. His words collided violently with the memories that swept through my mind, the late-night arguments, the whispers of accusations, the horror painted on my mother's face whenever he was mentioned. Protection was a twisted concept when tied to a man whose past had threatened to unravel our lives. Protect us from what? My mother demanded, clutching the bat tighter. From the truths hidden in the past, he replied, stepping forward cautiously as if every inch closer could simultaneously bring relief and danger. There are things you don't know that could put your lives in jeopardy. Evelynch is not just a childhood friend. She's embroiled in something far bigger than you both could comprehend. Why should we trust you? I asked, feeling the tremor in my hands ratchet up. You've done nothing but incite fear and chaos. You don't get to dictate our truth. I understand your distrust, but I never wanted any of this. I never meant for things to go this way. It's your grandmother's story that you need to understand, the choices she made to protect you from a truth that would have shattered your innocence. What truth? I urged, my insatiable curiosity fighting against the instinct to retreat. My heart wrestled with everything I thought I knew. But before he could answer, a loud crash echoed again from downstairs, snapping our attention away. The urgency swelled and adrenaline coursed through my veins like wildfire. Listen, Daniel said, dropping his apparent defense. You need to find Evelyn. Speak to her before it's too late. Your lives depend on it. Why? My voice cracked, fear and confusion intertwining. What does she have to do with any of this? I can't explain it all right now, he insisted, desperation flickering in his normally confident tone. There are those who want you to fail, who want to keep your family's secrets buried. Evelyn holds the key, and once you have it you can break the cycle. But first you must confront your grandmother's legacy. Leave, my mother growled, her voice becoming a protective shield around me as she aimed the bat defensively. We don't need your twisted version of help. Mom, wait. I pleaded, instinctively reaching out, but the words hung like smoke in the air, curling toward a reckoning I wasn't ready for. Daniel stood there, caught between the specter of the past and the weight of impending decisions. You don't understand. Time is running out for all of you. The person who called you, they're not just threats. They are chasing something. They want the journal. They want what your grandmother left behind, he warned, his voice rising, desperation creeping in. You have only one chance to choose the right path. Leave. My mother's voice was sharp, each syllable cemented with the finality of discovery and grief. I felt the conflict within me tear. Part of me wanted to reach out, to bridge the chasm of misunderstanding, while the other urged me to protect us from further harm. But in that moment of standoff, Daniel stepped away slowly, his frame dimming, shadows encasing him. Remember the name, he called back, his voice echoing against the walls of the attic. Evelyn. She will help you find your path. But be careful, there are forces at work that will do anything to stop you from uncovering the truth. As his figure dissolved into the darkness, I turned to my mother, our shared uncertainty binding us in a tangled knot. We can't let him go, I whispered, compelled by something greater than fear. We need to understand, and if he's right, if Evelyn holds answers. No, she said sharply. We've already paid too high a price for truths from the past. But what if no? Her voice cracked, raw with the burden of years spent hiding from the truth. You have no idea what it means to face these things, the darkness that awaits. It's not just your life, it's mine too. And the weight of her fear settled over us like a thick fog. My heart raced, torn between the instinct to reassure her and the growing insistence that we could no longer stay shackled by shadows of the past. Mom, I reached for her, but before I could grasp her hand, the floor below us trembled with another violent crash. The exterior door burst open, and in swept a gust of cool air, carrying an unwelcome presence along with it. Stop! A voice came from below, authoritative and laced with an anger that echoed through the walls. The voice wasn't unfamiliar, it belonged to a man I had seen in fleeting moments during my childhood, his figure wobbling somewhere in blurred memories of family gatherings, and as the truth began to edge closer, the layers of our past threatening to unfurl and expose themselves, I recognized that not only the truth about Evelyn was at stake, so were the lives we thought we'd secure. My heart raced with panic, the realization settling in with a shocking clarity. We were about to be thrust headfirst into the depths of our buried legacies. And I couldn't yet grasp the true implications of what was lurking just beyond our fragile threshold. Despite the chaos that threatened to engulf us, an unsettling calm washed over me as the weight of the man's voice resonated deeply in the attic. It was as if the very air throbbed with a pulse of ancient secrets, trapped in fragile whispers, each one begging to be heard, to be understood. The tension in my chest tightened as I wavered between bracing for confrontation and succumbing to the familiar embrace of fear that my mother clung to so dearly. Who are you? I called into the dark recesses below, my voice trembling but honest. The urgency pressed in around me, demanding answers to questions that gnawed at my soul. Reuben, he shouted back, the sound of his name broken by the creaking stairwell. You can't hide behind those old shadows forever. They won't protect you anymore. Shadows. I repeated, the word heavy with meaning. Shadows hide, but they also revealed it. My mother's grip on the baseball bat was so tight her knuckles blanched. Though I could see a flicker of recognition in her eyes, the name Reuben had cast a pall of discontent over her before. A blood memory stirred within me, hinting at a connection that was buried deep. The specter of family politics and grievances loomed larger than ever, and my heartbeat echoed against the rafters. "No, don't let him in," she pleaded, panic-stricken as she positioned herself more firmly between me and the attic's fragile veil of safety. Yet I felt something else in that protective stance, a desperate plea for stability amid the cracking veneer of our lives. "Mom," I whispered urgently, "he's powerful. Maybe he knows something we haven't uncovered yet about Evelyn and our family." "That's the danger, you don't know what you're inviting in," she hissed, her eyes darting to the shadows at the edge of the attic. "You've read the stories. Our family's history is riddled with betrayal. Do you want to open that door?" But could I really let those fears suffocate me? Let them continue to hold dominion over our lives? A swell of defiance rose in me, imagining a path illuminated by the flicker of hope that Daniel had so desperately sought to ignite. Perhaps safety lay not in the shadows, but in confronting the darkness together. "Reuben, what do you want?" I shouted again, more boldly this time. "Why are you here? What do I want?" "I want what's rightfully mine," he directed with ferocity that filled the air. "Your grandmother hid the truth, but it belongs to the bloodline. You and your mother, you can change everything. Join me in this. Together we could reclaim what was taken." "Reclaim?" my mother cried, voice strained, coiled tight like a spring. "From who? From what? You're asking us to trust a man who represents everything we fear." In the fight for clarity, a raw longing clawed at my insides. How often had we hidden from shadows, blaming the ghosts of our past, rather than facing them? My mother was steeling herself against the inevitable, her past, and I felt myself slipping. What if, by shielding her from truths buried deep, we were sentencing ourselves to a cycle of fear that would bind future generations? "Mom, please," I implored. What if all of this, the broken pieces of our past, everything that hung in silence, could lead us to something better? What if Evelyn knows how to break those chains? And before she could respond, the floor beneath our feet shuddered menacingly again, a harbinger of wild energies surging just below the surface. I sensed a tidal wave of urgency rising in me. "Listen," I cried out, heart pounding. "We have the power to choose our path. We can confront whatever darkness attempts to claim our family. We're not children anymore." But just as my words hung in the air, Reuben stepped through the doorframe, a figure draped in shadows yet electric with authority. The room felt stifling as minutes stretched painfully, a silence encasing us as though it were the lead cloak of unspoken grief. "You're making a mistake, trying to shield her from the truth," he said, casting a swift glance at my mother. "Your grandmother knew the price of ignorance. She paid dearly, but it was her legacy. And now it will be yours unless you step into the light." His fervor hung in the air like a fragile ache, begging to be explored. Just as the desire for discovery flared, my heart sank with the thought of action. The tangling emotions battled within me, embers dancing on the precipice of understanding, and in that vulnerable moment, as I felt my mother's protective shield flicker slightly, an unexpected sound caught us all off guard, a low groan emanating from somewhere below, followed by the thud of something heavy hitting the floor. All three pairs of eyes widened, the realization dawning upon us that we weren't just confronting the past, we were about to confront a living shadow of it, or perhaps the very consequences of the secrets we once buried. "Get back!" my mother shouted, a fierce instinct snapping into place. But as fear surged and instincts kicked in, I was gripped by another sensation, one I hadn't expected, a flicker of hope. The sound of movement signaled the reveal of truths and revelations yet unseen, mysteries curling from past traumas that could lead me to unwavering strength. "Evelyn," I breathed softly, the name anchoring something deep within me. Then, just as easily as breath slips, the door swung open fully to reveal a figure I had never anticipated. A woman. I recognized her instantly. She stood there, holding something in her hands. The air throbbed with finality, adrenaline coursing through my veins as that entity sought to intertwine with our fragmented legacies. In one poignant instant, that woman, cloaked in both familiarity and the unknown, opened her mouth to speak, but the intensity of her pronouncement bled into silence, her face a canvas of unveiled truths begging to be painted in the deep colors of angular grief, and I wondered, standing there in an attic crumbling under the weight of it all, whether we had set ourselves on a path brimming with hope or one struggling to extricate itself from an oppressive past. The journey forward twisted and turned with trepidation, And I could only guess what lay ahead: confrontation or reckoning, solace or despair awaiting, just beyond that threshold. The woman stepped into the dusty light of the attic, her features set in a determined guise that grounded her ethereal appearance. It was Evelyn, my grandmother's long-lost sister, a familial ghost mingled with the essence of secrets and sorrow that pervaded our lives. I knew her well from the countless stories my mother shared during sleepless nights, tales filled with both admiration and regret, weaving the fabric of a family divided yet bound by blood. "Mom!" I exclaimed, caught between joy and disbelief. "It's Evelyn." My mother reeled, her grip loosening on the baseball bat. Confusion flickered across her face, societal barriers and familial fractures colliding under the weight of this unexpected return. "But you were gone. We thought after everything," her voice faltered, trembling like the fragile air enveloping us. Evelyn's gaze softened, a well of unspilled tears glistening in her eyes. "I know I left without a word, leaving behind a chasm too wide to bridge. But I had my reasons I need you to understand." "Understand?" My mother's voice rose, brimming with indignation. "You don't get to waltz back in and expect us to accept you without question. You know nothing of what we've faced." "Exactly," I interjected, unyielding in my conviction while sensing the conflict roiling within my mother. "We deserve to hear the truth, to know why you disappeared. This isn't just about you or your choices. It's about all of us. I chose to protect you both," Evelyn replied, her voice a pained echo brimming with anguish. "There are dark currents in our family, currents I've fought against for years. I thought distance would shield you, but I see now," her voice quavered. "I see now that it only left you vulnerable. I can't change the past, but I can help you navigate what lies ahead." As those earnest words wrapped around me, I felt the tides of my own heartache press against the shore, urging me to move forward. "What happened? What truths did you unearth? Please, we need to know. It can't be worse than the silence we've endured." Evelyn's face hardened momentarily, as if wrestling with the weight of words withheld for too long. Her breath hitched. Then, turning her gaze from my mother to me, she whispered, "The price of knowledge is often sorrow. Our family history is laced with pain, betrayal, and choices made in desperation. When I left, I sought freedom from a darkness that would have swallowed me whole, but it came at a cost. It unveiled layers of secrets that, if revealed, could shatter everything you believe. I am tired of living in fear." My declaration burst forth, fueled by a desperate hunger for clarity. "If we're to move forward, we need to face the past. We can't carry this weight any longer." Reuben stepped forward, his expression one of impatience mixed with fear. "You don't understand the implications of unraveling this family history. It's a Pandora's box, and once opened, it could ensnare us all." "Maybe it's time to let the darkness breathe," I countered, passion igniting my resolve. "Our lives may be bound to tragedy, but it doesn't mean we're destined to repeat it. I refuse to let what happened to you, to our family, haunt us any longer. We owe it to ourselves to claim our story." Every jagged piece. As I looked at my mother, the uncertainty shimmering in her eyes began to dull, replaced by a flicker of trepidation and hope. Perhaps Evelyn's return was closer to an answer she yearned for, an answer that didn't require the furrows of her past to lay heavy on her spirit any longer. Evelyn nodded slowly, that familiar glimmer of courage threading its way through her distressed demeanor. "What you seek is buried beneath the weight of connection and betrayal. In the shadows of our past lies the key to our future." And then, as if fate pressed its ear against the door of the attic, a sudden tremor shook the house, rattling the walls and cascading dust from above. The sound of chaos pulsed beneath us with a warning, a reminder that our journey would not be smooth. "Hold on tight," I shouted, half to my mother, half to myself, knowing that uncertainty awaited beyond the threshold of absolution we were daring to cross. Just then, Reuben's voice broke through the tumult with urgency. "Listen, you can't trust her. She's the embodiment of everything that fell apart." "You're wrong," I fired back, fear dancing between us like intangible shadows. Before I could respond, a wretched cry echoed from below, raw and haunting. It pierced through the looming fog of our confrontation. I had heard that voice before, the sound birthed from anguish, familiar yet laced with confusion. "Evelyn!" It called out desperately, the name echoing through the chaos as shadows flickered around us, hungry and relentless. "Evelyn, is that?" My voice trembled with realization, the shards of the past beginning to converge. This revelation threatened to unravel everything we thought we understood. Evelyn's face drained of color, and in that instant, the true battle we had yet to confront unfurled at our feet, a reckoning that transcended our individual traumas, binding us inexorably to the very shadows that had cast us down. And before another word could be summoned, the door burst open entirely, revealing more than we ever expected, a collective of past and present entwined, poised on the brink of resurgence. The race toward reclamation had begun, and we stood ready to either face it together or fall apart forever beneath its weight. My heart thudded in my chest as the air around us pulsated with the deep breath of confrontation. The door swung wider, revealing a swirling mass of energy that crackled through the atmosphere like a storm. And standing amid the gusts was Evelyn, her face carved in raw emotion, the shadow of her presence flickering against the dying light. The very elements seemed to conspire around us, ebbs and flows of mystery revealing the truth we had fought so hard to unearth. Evelyn, I breathed, the name trembling on my lips. She stepped further into the light, her eyes wide and vivid with the tension we all shared. I never meant for you to find out this way, she spoke, her voice carrying a weight that seemed to seep into the very bones of the attic. Why now? My mother's incredulous tone arrested the moment. Why return only to dredge up what we buried? I had to, Evelyn replied, her gaze sweeping between us as the shadows played upon her face. The secrets that kept you safe are the same ones that put you in danger. It's why I chose to sever ties. I thought if I disappeared, you'd be shielded from the aftermath of my decisions. But it didn't work. I interjected, a swell of frustration rising in me. We were left to battle ghosts alone. All this time we've lived in fear and silence, believing it was the safer path. But now it's too late for that. Evelyn exhaled deeply, her breath a tremor against the uncertainty. The truth isn't just a weapon, it's light. Light that can expose dark things, but it can also bring healing. We must confront it together. We have to break the cycle. Just as her emotional plea settled in the atmosphere, our surroundings suddenly erupted with a gust of energy that felt like a warning bell tolling in the not-so-distant future. Get ready, I shouted, my instincts igniting, drawing us closer together. Everything felt electric with purpose, as if the past had stretched out its hand, daring us to grasp it. Evelyn stepped forward, her presence grounding me. We'll face this as a family. Together. Her voice carried a fierce determination. In that moment, the silence was abruptly pierced by another shadow, a figure emerging from the depths of darkness. You shouldn't be here, Evelyn. A dark voice boomed, and a man I recognized stepped into the fray. Reuben, enough. I shouted, my heart racing as I faced him. You don't get to dictate what we uncover. Reuben's expression twisted into one of contempt, his voice slicing through the layered tension. You don't understand the breadth of what you're about to unleash. The past is not just memories, it carries weight, a burden you have no idea how to bear. What gives you the right to decide that for us? My voice was taut, a thread pulled to the breaking point. This is our story to reshape, not yours. Your grandmother didn't tell you everything for a reason. He sneered, a cruel smile breaking across his lips. You've never touched the raw nerve of the truth. You think this quest is a path to healing, but it's a slippery slope, one fraught with darkness. As the chilling dread unfurled, I felt the tremor of my mother's hand on my shoulder, a reminder she was beside me. Her fear mirrored my own, yet there was something deeper breaking within her fortress of silence, a glimmer of courage that urged me onward. Then let us face it, I declared, inwardly bracing against the weight of each word. Evelyn nodded, a small yet solid affirmation. Let us take a step toward the truth. The air shifted, crackling with a charged promise of resolution as I felt the undercurrent of our connected fates. The pieces of our family narrative were swirling into a single cohesive picture. There was no turning back now. Reuben's gaze flickered between us, realization dawning that somewhere within us was an unstoppable force, one that sought freedom and reclamation, incompatible with his perspective. Fools, he sneered, taking a step backwards, his bravado faltering under the weight of our determination. Every shadow has a name, Evelyn called out, her voice ringing defiantly. Each ghost deserves to be acknowledged. And there it was, a proclamation that hung in the air like a spell, one that softened the edges of fear and hardened the resolve we had built between us. The connection we held in that attic wasn't just familial. It was woven from the bonds of all the choices made along the way, the love, the betrayals, The shadows danced around us like ghosts yearning for release. Evelyn took my hand, and then my mother's, creating a chain that looped through time and experience, one so firm and tight that it sparked warmth along the edges of fear. Together, I whispered, feeling the strength coursing between us. Memories melded into one, driving for, say, a unified front born out of pain. A sudden roar echoed beneath us, a chilling reminder that the unknown was still encroaching. And as I locked eyes with both women, I knew we would face whatever emerged together. Bring them on, I said, standing taller. We are not buried secrets. We are the light, and we will shine through the darkness. Evelyn squeezed my hand tighter, our collective strength pulsing against the illicit shadows surrounding us. Together we faced the doorway leading into the unknown fog, the echoing consciousness of our past trailing behind us, calling us boldly into both redemption and reclamation. As I stepped forward, I blurred the edges of uncertainty, feeling at once both terrified and utterly liberated. The story that stretched ahead of us was ours to write, loomed heavily with shadows yet lit by strength, love, and all the secrets finally entwined with truth. In that moment, as we stood on the cusp of liberation, I learned that fear could only grip those who allowed it to shackle their hearts. My grandmother's journey hadn't been one of tragedy but rather of survival. Standing there, poised between the past's clutches and the promise of our future, I understood the power of choice. Together, we face it all, I proclaimed softly as we turned our backs on the shadows, resolved to step into the light. And it was then, hand in hand, we walked towards the precipice of possibility, ready to unveil the intricate tapestry of our family's story, each stitch a thread of resilience, each tear a token of love. In one collective heartbeat, our fractured histories bound us together, framing a lesson that echoed achingly through generations. That even in darkness we could create our own light. And that light would shine brighter than any shadow could ever encompass.